to Dead Headspace. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and all other major platforms. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, and today my co-host Brendan LaFaro couldn't be with us. He'll return next week, folks. Today we're talking with author and podcaster Matt Wildasin. Matt, how is it going?
Hey guys, how's it going? Or I should say Guy. Brennan's not here today.
What got you into horror?
Me? Oh, geez. I think I did a review of this once before for a couple other places. I was asked this, but in the gist of it, it all started when I was a kid. I think to this day, I still can't remember the first horror movie I watched that literally scared the living shit out of me. And if I found it again, I would probably laugh myself to death just because it's probably a crappy B movie that is not scary whatsoever. Yeah. But I just remember being afraid. And for some reason, that was like I was really interested in that, because at that moment in my life, it was kind of like an emotion I hadn't felt before. And it was just, or at least to my recollection at that time, I don't remember being afraid like when I was a baby and stuff, but it was just interesting. And as I went through life and I was like, well, there's horror movies and, I wonder if there's like books, because I was like really into reading when I was young. And then like, it was like Scary Stories came around.
Oh, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark?
Yeah, because it was like, I know they probably had this when you were in school too. It was like the Scholastic book fairs.
I love those.
Yeah, that's where I ran into those first. And like I saw those and they were like next to Goosebump books, and like Goosebump books were fine. I read them. But like for some reason, Scary Stories, I was like, these look like they're like the hardcore shit. Like, yeah, let's get into those. And at the, in retrospect, they were like really both at the same level.
But the illustrations themselves, they're creepy as all hell.
Oh my God. Steve Gemmel's art was amazing in those books. And
yeah.
Like he does have some art out there that never got into those books. And like, I always wanted to own like an actual print or like a copy of something he drew, but I don't think I ever will. But yeah, like those books got me into it. And then I started reading Stephen King, as most people seem to do.
Yeah.
When they get older. And I think the first Stephen King book I read was Cujo.
Okay.
Which at the time resonated to me a lot because I was very scared of big dogs. And my neighbor down the street had a St. Bernard. So reading that book, having that living down the street, and I'm just like, so are these kind of dogs? Will they just go nuts whenever? But yeah, like I got into King, was reading King for a while. And, then like I found other people like Charles Grant and Kuntz. And, I didn't know much about Brian Keene till later in my life, obviously. But I wish I would have come across his books when I was younger, because I think it would have molded me even a little bit more differently than it had just reading those other guys. But yeah, I love horror because it's one of those genres that I feel like transcends every other genre. You can seamlessly fit anything into it.
Sure.
And it just, people are like, oh, well, that's not horror, that's sci-fi. And it's like, well, sci-fi in terms of things can be horror as well. There can be romantic horrors. There's great horror comedies out there. Actually, there's tons of them, and that's what I always loved about it, because you can always have those other things inside of horror. But at the end of the day, being scared, I feel, is like one of those emotions that's like so cool, because it's like you can be in love and, you have those heart flutters and that's all great. But like feeling scared and feeling vulnerable and like you have that feeling that, you don't get anywhere else. That's what I love about it.
That's kind of what got me into it too. Are you a 90s kid? I think we're similar in age.
Oh yeah. I grew up in the 90s.
So I'm 31. Are we close?
I've got 6 years on you, but
okay. Well, it's still fair to say we experienced probably a lot of the same things. And
yeah.
I don't know. Is Spencer's, was that big in PA?
I mean, we had one. It was kind of one of those stores where you kind of go in and you're like, well, I don't know if I should go on the left side of the store because that looks like a bunch of stuff I'm not allowed to buy yet.
I asked, yeah, I asked because there was one in my local mall that I went to all the time as a kid. I wasn't a mall rat, but I certainly went a lot to get CDs, DVDs, and I don't know what else. Probably toys at like KB Toys, Toys R Us. But
oh hell yeah!
I remember at Spencer's there was this Chucky. I want to say it was probably the Bride of Chucky, but maybe that's way too late. But I remember there was a Chucky doll, and that would scare the shit out of me. And I just always found myself like having to go back in that one aisle. I'm like, it's creepy. Well, okay.
Right. It's like it draws you in, even though you don't want to be near it.
And I remember just also when I'm a kid, where I grew up. I grew up in this town called Bridgewater, Massachusetts, and there's this thing called the Bridgewater Triangle, and
yes.
it's full of all this weird shit, and I didn't realize until I was older, but I'm thinking, you know what? All the tales of the Wampanoag Indians and all these other weird UFO sightings, quote unquote, the Grassman or Bigfoot. It makes sense why I like this shit.
Yeah. Oh my God, I am. Like, since you brought up like cryptid stuff and like haunted, like I am so into that shit. It's not even funny.
No, I could tell reading your debut collection, Edge of Twilight.
Oh yeah. There's a good bit of stuff in there that deals with that was after I wrote that and I put it all together, like mixing where I wanted which story to be. I was like, I wrote a lot of shit about hiking. There's a lot of stories about being in the middle of the woods in this book, but that's always hiking's been a passion of mine. But I've always really been into cryptids, although there's some of them that I will fully admit aren't plausibly able to exist, but the idea behind them still really fascinating, at least. With Pennsylvania, I think we rank third in like Sasquatch sightings or something like that. Now you guys, of course, have the Jersey Devil down there.
Yeah, so that was where the original Bigfoot footage was in New Jersey.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I keep forgetting the name of that footage, but
I forget the town, and then I don't know the name of it. But from back in Bridgewater, there's this guy. I forget his name, but he was the one that started the term Bridgewater Triangle in the 70s. And the funny thing is me and Brennan, we talked with this author, Andy Cole, months ago, and he's from, I don't know if you're aware, and anyone listening that isn't, he's from Australia. And he's like, I've heard of that. And we started talking about that. And Brennan's like, it's funny, I live here. And I didn't know about that until Pat told me about it a little while ago. But this guy from Australia knew about it. It's kind of makes me feel weird.
It's just like you get an eye opener there.
What do you think is the most interesting cryptozoologist? That's not the right word. What word am I looking for? Cryptozoology? I'm struggling.
Okay, you're asking me what I think the most interesting cryptid is in the realm of cryptozoology?
Yes, within the Pennsylvania area.
Within PA?
Yes.
PA has some really wacky ones, man. Like we've got like the Albat witches, which are like tiny ape creatures that live like actually not too far away from where I live. I could drive there in 5 minutes and like search for them if I wanted to. But they're like tiny little ape creatures that live up in the mountainous regions. You're supposed to like leave them apples and they'll steal them and stuff. Like that's goofy. We're supposed to have carp the size of, or not carp, like catfish the size of school buses in some of the rivers. And like what's in Raystown? There's an area called Raystown Lake. There's supposed to be like their own Nessie in there. They call him Raystown Ray. Yeah, and I'm just like I don't. A plesiosaur needs a pretty decent ecosystem, I would say.
Oh yeah,
and I don't think a park lake's gonna do it. not to put down anybody from Raystown that might be listening. Like I want it to be real as shit too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Bigfoot. Like, I think that they existed. They were, I believe, based off of the Gigantopithecus, which existed 100,000 years ago. But I don't know, man. I think that someone in New Jersey or PA or whatever would find them by now at this point with all the technology we have.
Well, and you would think out of all the people that do find one, there'd be at least one goddamn person that isn't filming it with a potato. Like, every major photo that comes up, it's like there's KY smeared on the lens, and I don't fucking get it.
That's like those security cameras that, like, we got high-tech security equipment, or you should, and then you see, like, hey, have you seen this guy? He's pixelated, and you can't tell what race he is.
Yeah, it's like, help us find this guy. It's like, did you put on the pixel filter? Like, are you blurring him out? No, that's the camera.
The other one that I thought was interesting was, I don't know who actually believes this, but the megalodon is still a thing. And I listened to this one documentary where they said, let's just say for fun that the megalodon species lived so far below that we couldn't see them, we can't find them yet. You got to think that there's very few. They won't be able to eat much down there because there's not many species that live that far below the surface of the ocean, and they're huge. The great whites alone eat so much goddamn food every day, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's that, and there's also the idea of thinking about pressure that's in the water that far, because most of the stuff that lives down there is like cephalopods and things of like glassy type body nature, so like they can withhold the pressure of being that deep. Like, I don't think a shark can do that. I unless some megalodon's like really strong. But then again, one lost in a fight to Jason Statham, so I don't really.
What did you think of that movie?
I mean, it was good popcorn stuff, but I mean, it's not on my shelf, if that's going to answer the question.
Now, I don't think I don't see you talking about this. Maybe I miss it, but do you, before the pandemic, did you go to the theater a lot to watch films?
There was a point in time I once was trying to start my own network called The Grinded Word. I had a website where I did like written reviews of things and that. And a buddy of mine down the way, after I started getting podcasts going, he's like, oh, I want to do a movie podcast. I was like, cool. Yeah, that's fine. Why not? Little did I know that meant going to like the movie theater every fucking week. And, that kind of got a little old after a while. Him and I got really worn down. We probably aged 5 years in a summer. But yeah, like I was going religiously there for a while, and then I just kind of stopped because I don't know if it's just me getting older and getting cynical, but everything fucking seems the same anymore, and I just don't want to put up with people in the theaters anymore. Yeah,
I definitely get that. It irks the shit out of me when people are very loud and talking, and you're like, why the fuck did you come here? Did you come here to annoy me? Because that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
But my wife got me a Regal, like a year subscription thing where I could see as many movies as I wanted for 1 year. So that was fun for the first like 3 months of this year.
Oh no.
The last movie I saw was amazing. It was Parasite, and it came out for a few days.
Oh yeah, Parasite was fucking amazing. At least you got to see a good one before the end of the pandemic, though. Like, at least you got to see a good movie.
Yeah, before that, I saw one that other friends liked that I didn't care for, which was Gretel and Hansel. And then
I didn't see that. Yeah.
Like, it's a retelling of Hansel and Gretel. It's like cool effects, but I've seen it.
Yeah, the last time I watched anything with that title in it, I think it was the one where they switched it around. It was Gretel and Hansel, and that was the one where it was like an action movie with Jeremy Renner in it.
Yeah.
And I saw that in fucking 3D as well, mind you. So I spent the extra money to be upset when I walked out of the theater that day.
And then the only other one I remember was Underwater, I think, with Kristen Dunst. No,
yeah,
not Kristen Dunst. Kristen Stewart.
Kristen Stewart, yeah. I rented that at home. I enjoyed it a lot. A lot of people were kind of miffed by, the creature reveal at the end, and I don't know if it's spoilers or not by now, but, it's the great one, you know.
Yeah,
and
that was really cool to see a Lovecraft reference in a major film.
Yeah, and I mean, it took me completely by surprise. Like when there's that scene where you see all the, I guess, his follower type squid people like suck up into the pores of his arm and his arm just pulls away. I'm looking at it and in my head I'm like, nah, they didn't have the balls to do that, did they? Like no one puts this guy on screen. Did they seriously do this?
And they did a good job.
Yeah, it looked like him. Like the only thing I was like, he doesn't have wings. So I wonder if that's playing into something where like they didn't kill him. And maybe this when that nuclear explosion goes off, it kind of mutates him in some sort of way. I don't know. I mean, that would be a really shitty thing to do. But then again, Hollywood does stuff like that all the time. So I don't know.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. I feel like this is right. But weren't you guys on Brian Show, the horror show with Brian Keene? Weren't you guys just talking about Del Toro's attempts to get the Mountains of Madness films?
Yeah, we had talked about that a little bit. Del Toro said he will not stop until he's able to make that movie. And I'm like, I hope they do. Why not? Of all directors, like, come on.
Del Toro is the guy it's him or Carpenter that I can think of for like, they're the two top dogs of this genre. They've proved it. They probably make bang for the studio. Just everything that Del Toro does is, as far as I can see as a fan, is gold. I've loved it all, and all his creature features and ones that have monsters and, you know, Hellboy. I liked Hellboy, but they've been great. I mean,
things that he gets to direct that he's allowed to have visionary control of usually turn out to be really well. Like, and it does good for the studios, I think. Like, you know, when they first announced Pacific Rim, I didn't know who was directing it. And then when they said it was him, I was like, okay, this might actually have some legs. And who would have thought a guy that did a movie like Pan's Labyrinth is like, okay, well, now here's essentially like Evangelion on screen fighting kaiju. And there you go. And it fucking worked, you know? And he's such an interesting guy, because I remember I watched the special features for that movie, and he had like a computer layout of like the Gypsy Danger robot. And he's like, oh yeah, well, you see, if you pay attention when this part moves, this piston fires, which then shifts this gear. And like, he's showing like the process that he made these animators go through to make it look as authentic as it possibly could, down to like the gears and stuff.
Yeah, he's a true fan of what he does. What I think he grew up, I'm pretty sure I heard this correctly. He was a poor kid from Mexico, and I don't think he doesn't forget his roots. And it's people like that end up really never ever stopping their love for what they do.
Yeah, I would say if you're really into him and you want to see like some of his earlier works, if you've never seen The Devil's Backbone, definitely give that a watch.
Was that the first feature film that he did?
I believe so. It's in Spanish. So you will have to have subtitles on. So I'm sorry if you don't like reading, but you know, it's a good film though. You should really check it out if you haven't seen it.
Back to Parasite. That was awesome with subtitles, man. I like subtitles. I like to. We were just talking about this on an earlier episode. I forget with who, but like dubbing, when you have something dubbed, it rips the soul out of a film. I'm okay with reading because I get to experience it, and I don't speak every language. I only speak English, so I want to know what they're saying, so I'm cool with that.
Right. I totally agree. I think the only exception to that rule with dubbing is like Studio Ghibli movies, because they get like, they get like professional American actors to dub, and it's cartoon, so it works, you know what I mean? But like, I remember the first time I watched The Host, which was another one of that same director's movies. I watched it with dubbing, and I fucking hated it. And then like my friend's like, no, go back and watch it like with subtitles, and it worked better, because like you could read it and then you look and you see the expression on the people's faces and you actually feel it more than just somebody being like, no, please don't, my son.
Bong Joon-ho.
Bong Joon-ho, yeah, that's his name. He's a fantastic director.
He's amazing. For like foreign films, and I'm really just right now I got to expand my horizon with like Italian and other European films, but I'm really just focused on Asian films as far as foreign ones go. But I know there's so many other amazing ones I just haven't seen yet. But Train to Busan, I might be saying that wrong.
Oh yeah, Train to Busan, yeah, that's a good movie too.
And Kung Fu Hustle, which I got on DVD. I love the shit out of that movie.
Holy shit, do I love Kung Fu Hustle. That is the perfect mix of martial arts and comedy. I I can't think of a better movie like unless you count like some Jackie Chan movies, but that's just kind of like subtle comedy thrown in there.
Yeah, this had like references to like Looney Tunes. Stephen Chow, I mean that guy, I think he was the writer or director. I know he did something behind the scenes. That's a guy that's got a huge discography.
Yeah.
Beyond that, what kind of films do you typically like? Do you stick to horror?
I do tend to stick to horror. I just recently downloaded. I got like a free code for Shudder for a month. That app, and I've been watching it almost every day because there's some films on there that I can't get easily in this country. And there's some that just are so obscure that I don't even think they got Blu-ray releases or might not even have gotten DVD releases. But
holy shit.
Yeah, so it's a really good app if you're in the horror. And I've been watching a lot of movies on there, catching up on some old like English horror movies, some Italian stuff, some, you know, like I've been binging Joe Bob's The Last Drive-In. Which some of the stuff he says, I don't know how he gets away with in this day and age, but
I guess he's grandfathered in.
Yeah, literally, because he's about a granddad right now too. But I'd say like horror dominates most of my picks. Now, I say second probably goes to like superhero films, and just because they're more referential in this day and age, there's just more of them.
Yeah.
And like I used to be a huge comedy fan, like watching comedy films, but today comedies aren't really that funny anymore. And it's like, and not to get too political, but it's like you do have to watch a lot of what you say nowadays.
That's why I love It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Fucking love Always Sunny. that show's the best.
I'm not going to repeat the words they say. The last season, not the very last season, but 2 seasons ago, they said every word that would get mostly everyone else that's white into a lot of trouble.
Oh, yeah. I think I know which episode you're talking about.
Yeah, that's really all I can say, or I'm definitely going to get people that are probably going to get real mad at me, and I don't blame them.
Yeah. So like you brought up they're good. I think comedy-wise, I got into Letterkenny.
What's that?
It's on Hulu. It's a show about basically Canadian. It takes place in Canada. They're like Canadian farmers, but it's like, you know, like redneckish type level stuff. But it's like they fire a million jokes off out like every 10 seconds. And like everything references back to previous episodes. Like they kind of like Always Sunny does. They'll start a joke and they kind of keep it. They'll go back to it later on and stuff like that. So it's really funny.
Speaking of Canadian funny shows, I love Trailer Park Boys, man.
I have not seen that yet. Brian told me I should watch that, and I haven't seen it yet.
It's on Netflix. You can watch. So the weird thing about that show is I believe it got canceled after like 8 or 9 seasons. They brought it back. I think I want to say Netflix brought it back, but I'm not too sure. And so one of the main characters died a couple of years ago. I think 2 or 3 years ago, and it turned into an animation because they do drugs all the time, and they took so many mushrooms that they saw life in an animation, and now it's an animation.
Interesting.
It's they got a lot of movies. They're all silly. It's one of those shows where you don't have to start from the beginning. You'll appreciate it more if you do.
Okay.
They have Tom. Okay, so I don't know what season it is. It might be like season 9 or 10, but they have Tom Arnold in it where him and Snoop Dogg, they arrive to the trailer park. They arrive to the trailer park. They're in a few episodes, and they just want to hang out with the main characters because it's a mockumentary. And Tom Arnold wants to do all this like poor man shit, and I don't know. Tom Arnold's very political and gets nuts, but I still think the guy's hilarious.
Uh-huh.
And Snoop Dogg is Snoop Dogg, so
I say he's Snoop Dogg in everything he does. Yeah.
So I'd like to start talking about Grindcast. I was just listening to your recent episode 375. Holy shit, man! 375 episodes in what, 5 years?
Yeah, and there's a reason for that.
How about we start from the very beginning? Like, was there a podcast before? What got you into doing this?
There was no podcast before. Way back at five years ago now. Probably soon going on. I think this coming February would be 6 years. I think I had mentioned prior. I had started the Grinded Word website where I was just doing reviews and it was like a blog, giving my thoughts on this and that and random things. And it was Will and I, co-host. We've been friends since freshman year of high school. So we graduated in 2001. So math-wise, we've been friends for 20 plus years. Put it that way. And all the time in high school and, after high school, we've always been like, man, we should have a show, man. Like, we always wanted to do like a TV show, but landing something like that is slim to nil. But yeah, he was like, yeah, we should do some kind of a show. We should do something like that. And, throughout all the time, I've always been thinking about it. It was always something in the back of my head. And then I just podcasting started becoming a thing. And back in the early days of podcasting, it was like you could only get them in one place and not many people really tuned in as much, but it still was gaining popularity. And I was tinkering with the ideas then. And I had a friend who I met him through some other friends basically. And he had one and he was showing me how it all works and everything. And he's like, oh, and then you have to go through this bullshit process to get it on Apple. And I watched how he did that and I was like, I think I'll wait.
What was that process like? Just to focus on this point real quick, because I only started mine this year in 2020.
Well, see, in this, my God, I don't even know if I can recall how that process went, because this was 10 years ago now.
Oh, shit.
Because this was when it was starting.
Yeah, that's when Kevin Smith started his, I believe, around 10 years, maybe a little longer. But that was the beginning.
Yeah. So, and he was showing me, it was just all this shit with you posting URLs. And it was it kind of reminded me of the early days of MySpace where you actually had to know a little HTML to get stuff to work properly and everything. So, yeah. And younger me, 10-year-old, younger me back then was just kind of I'll wait till they make it a little easier.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't even have anybody who was going to do it with me at the time. It was just, poking around, seeing what worked. So time went on. And then I met Jason, the other co-host. He started working at the restaurant I used to work at. And him and I got to talking, and he was really into video games like I was. And we would always talk about, gaming and shit while we were working. And I was like, I think I found my trifecta. Now I just need to figure out how to do this stuff. So I think it took me a month or so. I sat down, figured out, this is Audacity. This is how Audacity works. This is, you should use Libsyn. This is how you get on Libsyn. This is how you edit. And I basically taught myself all that stuff in a couple months, and then got Will and Jason in the studio, and we recorded some of our first stuff. I not all the episodes that we first recorded actually got on the air. One of them did. And that was one that I recorded with my laptop mic because I didn't have a mic at the time and it sounded atrocious.
Yeah, I bet.
But I was just like, we'll put it up for shits and giggles. Who cares? But yeah, then we were doing 2 shows a night.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, they would come over. We record 2 shows in a night and we would release Monday and Friday. So it went that way for a while. Then we started doing gaming on YouTube and I was making videos for the podcast. We were filming it and I was editing the videos. I was editing gameplay footage, like for a Let's Play channel on YouTube. So we had 2 YouTube channels, and I was editing 2 to 3 videos a week for that. And I was also editing like 2 episodes of audio a week and going to a full-time job. And I also tried to get writing started around that time too. So I don't know how to let myself have downtime, which is probably one of my biggest flaws. But yeah, it went that way for a while. And then it had to slow down. I couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah, and you did 5 days to jump ahead. Sorry for skipping years, but jumping ahead to this year, you did 5 days in a row.
That was actually what was 8 days.
Oh
I took the weekends off. So there was like 1 full week and then 3 days the following week. Yeah, I did daily episodes. That was when the first quarantine started. It's funny to say first because it's like it never really ended. But when you think about it in your head of like, oh, now you can go do this. Oh, you can kind of do. It feels like you went through like 17 different quarantine stages. But so, yeah, I did 8 days of that. And I was also writing a short story a day for my Facebook group, Horrors Untold, which my short story collections are named after. I was doing that, short stories, and still doing the stuff for the Brian Keene radio network on the side as well. So those were crazy times too, but it kept me sane.
Yeah, I gotta think like podcasts probably, because I've heard from people where they messaged me and said that, you know, like I needed this. What was your feedback been like over the years
for the podcasting?
Yeah.
The funny thing was, and it still kind of goes this way, like for Grindcast, for some reason, people don't reach out to us that much. It's odd. Like I will get every now and then hear the, you know, like, oh, well, I'm glad that you guys do this because, you know, I'm going through some tough stuff and it makes me laugh and I feel better. And like, I'm like, that's great. I love hearing that I'm helping people. It's not that people have to like tell me how we're doing all the time, but in the gist of things, like when I see if Mary puts up an episode or Brian does, or, you know, some other people I know that have shows, like they get feedback and Grindcast doesn't really get it. I don't know why. I give out questions a lot. We've got like 2 places to go to reply to us and everything, but we don't normally get a whole lot of feedback. And I don't know, maybe that means to me that we're just doing it right and there's nothing to complain about. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I like listening to you guys. You 3 are fun. You can tell that you guys are friends and you have an easy, natural way to talk to each other. And there's not always agreements, and it's never, you know, a bad battling that you guys have. It's fun to listen to as a spectator.
I do love how nicely you put that. Like, there's not always agreements.
I particularly like, I've said this to you, but I mean, in the off chance that Jason does hear this or someone else, maybe will. I don't know if they've watched Home Videos, the show, but for me, he sounds like Coach McGurk, the actor Jason, the actor that voices for Archer.
Yeah. What's his name? John Benjamin. That's the actor. That's the voice actor's name. Yeah. I told him that before. I was like, you know, you do sound like Coach McGurk, especially when you're like you have that tone where you're just not giving a shit.
I hear that all the time when he speaks.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. Maybe I should start purposely going in and slowing down his audio. So
do you guys record always on? I know with the latest episode that came out yesterday or today, it wasn't all. You guys aren't all in the same studio, but are you typically in the same studio?
When the quarantine happened, we weren't. We were just doing it through a conference call. I just had my phone down by the mic, near the mic. But most of the time, we are all in the same studio. We live pretty close to each other. So yeah, they all come over. We sit down for about an hour and a half. You know, do our bullshit, and we hang out for a little afterwards, and that's the end of the day. But yeah, we're usually all in the same room.
That's pretty cool, man. So Brendan lives in Massachusetts, which coincidentally, that's what I think that's what first drew me to him I just saw, hey, this guy lives near my old hometown. So,
Oh, cool.
I live, as you know, in Jersey now, but yeah, we're just on Skype. It would be fun. I like the idea of doing it live, but how the hell am I supposed to arrange talking to someone from even PA without the pandemic? Like that
Yeah.
it sounds really hard to do, and I want to talk to people over the world. I would love it if I could just have enough money to fly them in.
Oh man,
That's a dream, dude. That's not gonna ever happen. I'm well aware of that.
I mean, unless you start getting that Joe Rogan money, then maybe you could fly people in. But
didn't he make like $200 million on that Spotify deal?
Oh my God, I think he's probably the most successful podcaster in history right now.
He has to be. He talked to from Bernie Sanders to Neil deGrasse Tyson to Robert Downey Jr. You're like, come on.
Yeah, and some of the guests he gets, I'm just kind of in my head. Like you mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm like, Joe, do you really think you have anything you can talk to this guy about? The whole time I would just be like, this guy's gonna make me look like an imbecile.
Oh yeah, I've read one of Neil's books. It was Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. It's like 180 pages, and it describes from the beginning of time. And one chapter talks about the process of photocells, and I'm probably fucking it up, but he talks about basically from the Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
And he says, and after a big like chunk, he goes, and this happened within a tenth of a second. I'm like, I can't even comprehend like a fraction of a second of what happened. The whole book.
It's like this process sounded like it took a week.
The whole book, like I wanted to say I took a lot away from it. What I took away from it was I'm a stupid ape. I would be curious. I would be interested to know how he felt. Joe Rogan felt when he first talked to Neil deGrasse Tyson, because I'm sure he's fine about it now. And I'm curious how it's really kind of how he's felt nervous wise in the beginning, if at all. I'm sure he wasn't, because he's kind of like he was around before then. But for me, I was very nervous to record with my first guest. Were you in that same boat?
Our first guest was actually Brian. Funny enough.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, that was our first guest. I was kind of nervous, but because at the same time though, like I met Brian through working at a comic book store that I was doing as a part-time job. You know, the guys that were working there, they're like, oh yeah, you should have him on your show. He likes comic books and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Not knowing at the time, like who Brian was really. So then I sit down, I'm doing my research, and I'm just like, oh shit. this guy's somebody actually. But like, I tried to play it as cool as I could. Like, I feel like that's been like my interview process, because I've interviewed a couple people since then, and I just try to be as chill about it as I can and just try to be funny and have jokes, because I don't want them to feel like it's that, you know, oh, I'm your biggest fan. You know, and then you ask the same million questions they've heard every fucking time they get an interview, you know?
Right.
So when Brian came in, he sat down, and I'm trying to remember how this all started. And I was just like, hey, why don't you tell some people about yourself? And he said something about like, oh, well, you know, how can I boast about myself? You know, or it was something about like, you know, explaining who you are about yourself when some people know you. And I was like, okay, fine. Well, I'll do it. And I brought over my notebook that I took. I was like, this is all from Wikipedia. And we just like went about it that way. And he had a blast. And I feel like that's probably what started our friendship, was just he could talk to somebody that made him laugh, and he didn't have to feel like it was that uber nerd stuff, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a really interesting in with people like Mary San Giovanni and Brian, and you know, name anyone that goes to Scares I Care. I think that's so cool. Like that's something where you can probably, you know, down the line or even now be like, hey, so guess who I know and guess what stories I got. It's just something that not everyone has, and I think that's really neat.
Thank you. I mean, It was funny. Like, for some reason, never really thought that much about it at first. And that's not to downplay anybody that I know or have had experiences with right now. But it was just, to me, it was like, oh, I've made some new friends. Like, yes, they're high profile people, but they're also just people. So I made some new friends. And I think one of the first times I was ever interviewed, besides just like some other small venues, like Armand Rosamilia interviewed me for Armcast.
Mm.
And that was one of his first questions. He was just like, you're just this guy that came out of fucking nowhere. and now you're on the horror show. How, he's like, that's a seat that a bunch of other people would have wanted. Like, how the hell did you do it? And I was just like, well, it's not like I, tricked people into letting me on or anything. It was like, I just met Brian, we talked, and, the next thing I know, I was on as an occasional guest, and then I got brought on up full time. And then from there, I ended up being the engineer.
I actually started listening around that time to his show because, like you, and unlike many people I've talked to, I didn't read much in high school. I'm not saying you did that, but I didn't read Brian Keene until right now. I'm actually reading Ghoul. That's the first one I'm reading.
Ghoul's fantastic. You'll love that.
I've torn through 40 pages so far. It's an easy... I'm starting to realize that like books like that Keene write. I got The Hollower that's on my TBR, and I got Brian Lumley's Necroscope, Richard Lehman's In the Dark. They all came highly recommended. I have a feeling I'm going to tear through those, but the first leisure book I read was The Girl Next Door, and I had friends that said, don't let that be the first catch 'em. So I was like, okay, that'll be my first one. I tore through that, and I'm noticing, like, there's definitely a difference of, like, new writers that are good, and then those people that I just mentioned. They're so much fun to read. I feel like I could just tear through all those books and I'd still want more. But going back to what I was saying earlier, I never read Brian until now. I wish I did. I wish I was a kid that knew that leisure existed back in high school when they were still a thing. What books did you typically read in high school?
Oh, man. High school became that time where I didn't get much reading done because, to be frank, girls became a thing. I mean, that's high school. Girls became a thing. You start your drinking career at 14, and as soon as you can get a car, you're like, okay, well, anywhere but home is where I'm going to be. So, reading, I didn't get a whole lot of reading done in high school. I wish I could. I mean, I was buying books at that time. I was buying like, what the hell was that? I think the Cell came out when I was in high school.
Oh,
like I was still buying King books through high school, and I didn't delve that much into what more like other authors there were in the literary world at that time, just because, like I said, I was preoccupied with other stuff and, scraping by on grades. Because there's, besides all the partying stuff, you do have to sit down and go like, okay, well, I have to pass this stuff. So I had to buckle in.
Okay, so I guess I hit the nose on the head without real. That's not the expression. I definitely called it out right without even realizing that you didn't read a lot in high school either. I just found that the curriculum kind of beat the whole point of reading for fun out of me.
Well, yeah, there was that too. Because you spend all day with your nose in a book, and you're like, well, I'm going home now. I'm not going to read more. Plus, I got homework I got to do yet too.
Yeah. I remember the one that did it for me was All Quiet on the Western Front. Maybe I'd like it now, but I remember in high school I was like, okay, so if I had the choice between hitting myself in the face with a brick over reading this book, I choose the brick.
Oh, man, now that you mentioned, I was so pissed in high school because with all due respect, To Kill a Mockingbird is a fantastic book. But I had to read that 5 separate times for different English classes.
Oh my God.
And it's just like, when I got to high school, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, I'm in my junior year. There is no goddamn way now that I'm going to read this book again in this English class. And I happened to get with the one where they read that, and I was what would you call that? Like class shift, or like, like rotation, I guess you would say, from being in a class that would have read Beowulf.
Oh man, that would have been fun.
Well, I was like, I've read Beowulf. I love the story of Beowulf. Why the fuck do I have to read To Kill a Mockingbird again? And it was fun because at that point, I read it so many times that I just copy and pasted my fucking work from the previous time I did it, because I was like, I still have it in my computer from last year.
Yeah, Beowulf. That's a horror right there, and that's the oldest. Isn't that the oldest text that we got from human story?
Yeah, if I'm correct, it was a poem.
Right. Yes, it was a poem.
Yeah, there was a poem, and then like they found the translations, and then there's like 19 million different ways it was translated. I always find that interesting, much like Inferno and like the Dante Alighieri's work. Like there's 17 different iterations of how that story is told, and like you're just kind of like, well, which one's the true one? But like, yeah, Beowulf. I love the story of Beowulf because it has everything. You have monsters. You have like a Conan type story of this guy who's just unnaturally good at what he does, but there's really no reason behind it. But then you find out that he's basically lying about everything. And like, it's so good. It's like, it has like a lesson in humility along with like monsters and like dark age stuff. And, it's like this fantasy horror, everything like wrapped into one. And yeah, like, and then they went and made that movie.
Yeah. That was with Russell Crowe?
Oh, I was talking about the CG one.
Wasn't there one with Russell Crowe?
Or maybe you're thinking of Gladiator?
I don't know, man. They're all the same.
I don't know.
So,
I mean, you could put Russell Crowe in there. It wouldn't have changed the thing anyway.
He was in South Park, too. He did pretty good there.
Yeah, he was fighting around the world.
Yeah. Oh, that's another show that I like that I think is grandfathered into the whole can get away with anything.
I mean, yeah, for like to be on Comedy Central, which is like an actual like syndicated network, and being in a time slot where you can get away with saying fuck, I think you made it.
Let's talk about your first book that you published, Edge of Twilight.
Sure.
Yeah, what was that process like? Were you nervous to release it? What was the feedback like?
Oh man, I was deathly nervous to release that. The very first book I ever wrote, which I'm rewriting and releasing next month, actually, was called The Demon in the Glass. That is, you can get a free version of it on Smashwords right now, but that version of it's going to be obsolete pretty soon. But, that book was when I was first getting into the whole, like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start writing novels because I've always wanted to, even from when I was a kid. I remember, like, I got a typewriter from a yard sale when I was like a kid. They're like, oh, $1. I'm like, okay, fine. And I just sat there and like typed, and I was just typing up these stupid stories that like, I wish I still had them, because it would just probably be like dinosaurs are bad and they're mean, like stuff like that. But I always wanted to write books, and I got to a point. I think I was reading, like I was working my way through the Dark Tower series, and I was like, you know what, like, I fucking love this series. Like, this reinvigorated me. Like, I'm doing this. So I sat down, and I think it took me 4 months, and I wrote Demon in the Glass. And then I kind of just, the podcast stuff started, and like I was doing all that work. So like writing kind of took a really big backseat for a while. And the whole time we're doing the podcasting stuff, I was like, I wanted to start the podcasting because I wanted to get more of a, like, not persona per se, but I wanted to get like a presence in a sense, like on the internet. I wanted to have a name for, so if I put out more books, people are like, oh yeah, that's that guy that has that podcast. So doing that for so long and not writing, I started getting that itch where I'm like, all right, fellas, like, I love that we all love doing this, but there was more to it than this, and I got to start doing that. So that's when we backed down to doing one episode, and we had actually taken a break in between. I think we weren't recording for I think it was 2 months. And in that span, I started writing these short stories for this book. Oh my God, I can't remember the name of that story now. it was the one about the Sasquatch. I can't remember what I titled it now.
It dwells.
Thank you. That was the first one I wrote when I was going back to start making stories. And the first draft of that, I absolutely hated. Because I was like, this sounds so rough. It doesn't make any sense. Why would this guy do this? And why would this thing do that? And I was picking it apart, and I almost stopped myself from writing anything else. But, my wife, God bless her. And I feel like everyone who's ever succeeded at anything usually has a woman behind them to thank for it. God bless my wife, but she was like, you can't give up on this. You have to keep going. It's going to get better. You need to just practice. And, if you don't practice, it's never going to go anywhere. So I followed her advice. She would read stuff. She's my editor too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, I bet.
So, I started pumping stories out, and one of my favorites from that collection was The Stairs. That's one of my favorite stories. It's also based on a creepypasta where it was just, people would find stairs in the woods, but then I added the whole cosmic horror element to it, because cosmic horror is kind of one of my favorite genres, and I try to work it into a lot of things that I do. Yeah, it was just, I just wanted a different gamut of that was the original idea. It was I want a gamut of a bunch of different things. And then, most of them were about hiking in the woods, but I had a blast writing that.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. And then when that got out, it did pretty decently. And then I started the group, and a good, there's 164 members in that group. I think I had sent you an invite actually as well.
I'm a member of it.
Oh, are you? Okay.
I wasn't told, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a member.
Okay, cool. I can't keep track of them. But yeah, I got that done, and I love writing the short stories for the group every month, and I feel like the members that do read every month can kind of see the stages and how I've gotten better at what I do.
Yeah.
And because I feel, and I'm not trying to be cocky, but for the first time in a while, I've been feeling confident about my work, that it's not just fly by night stories, that I'm actually putting thought and, there's cohesion to it, and people want to come back to read more of my stuff. And that was one thing that I never thought I would get to. And now that there's people that tell me you got, it's good stuff, and I see reviews, and there's mostly 3, 4, and 5-star reviews for most stuff, I'm just I can't complain, man.
Yeah. I just, sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say, A Walk on a Winter's Night, the last story in that collection, I think objectively, and maybe subjective, I feel as a story, it was the best one. I'm not knocking the other ones, but I just thought it was such an interesting story. I'm not going to describe it because I don't want to ruin anything. I don't want to spoil it. But basically, the way you go about telling the tale of this protagonist and how things play out are very interesting, and you had my attention the whole time. So I want to read more after reading your collection.
No, well, thank you, man.
Yeah. Of course, and I do agree that there usually is a smarter woman behind a man, because nobody in our community would know who I was until if I never met her. I'd probably still be in Massachusetts working for a seltzer and soda company, thinking I was going to be a screenwriter and writing horrors, and not focusing on the technical stuff. So it would be garbage no matter how good the story is. It's just, you gotta execute it. And I was not doing that until I met her, and she read my stuff and said, Pat, you're mixing up your tenses here, and I don't want to read this shit.
No.
She didn't say it like that. But my words, not hers. But she did encourage. She read she's my earliest reader, and she read my stuff, and then she got me a Kindle, and I'm like, oh, I like reading. And then I read It. That was one of my first Stephen King's. I read The Stand. Why I read the first two Long's books first, I don't know. But yeah, I got the bug like you.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think The Stand was the second book I've read from him. So it was like I read Cujo, and I was just like, well, why don't I just take this giant bite out of the Stephen King sandwich next? And The Stand's probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Out of all his books. I love The Stand.
It's great.
And I think what was the other huge book of his I read recently? Under the Dome.
Okay.
Yeah. I read Under the Dome. That oh my God, that's a journey. Like, it's a really good book, but dear God, it's like it was a while since I went through another really thick King book since I finished It. And that was like years and years ago. And I forgot like the journey of going through like one of his real thick books. You just feel like you come out and you're like, wait, what season is it?
The last long one I read by him, actually it was Dark Tower 4. I was thinking it was 11/22/63. The JFK one.
Yeah, that's a good book too.
It's so good. It's the dystopia if JFK survived. That was scary, but then I'm looking at reality from right now to that, and I'm like, I'm not sure which one I'd rather choose.
I think the scarier things is like remembering some of the stuff I read in these books and like how they're happening.
Yeah,
I'm just like, where do you get your clairvoyance from? Because I want to know if you have any other predictions, because I want to start getting prepared right now.
Yeah, I wish I could say how could it get worse than a president that contradicts everything he says, and when he's called out on it, he's like, I didn't say that, but sir, there's video proof of it. You're fake news. Like, how do you go from that to a pandemic with a Black Lives Matter revolution happening and killer fucking hornets and flying snakes, and like, what simulation is this? Like, did we get uploaded into the wrong one?
See, I have a theory that, if anybody's a fan of Batman Forever, you might know where I'm going with this.
Yes,
I think
5 of you are.
5 of you. I think we're all suffering from like Jim Carrey's brain drain machine. Like, he sucked in everybody's thoughts, and now we're just going through the channels flipping very fast.
That's hilarious. You know what? That's so funny that you bring up that movie, because my dad took me to that. And I was a little kid, and I don't remember this, but he tells me, Danny DeVito's Penguin scared me so much I ran out of the theater crying.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he's so creepy in that. But what's Danny DeVito creepier in that, or a particular scene in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where he is basically birthed out of a couch naked and greased up?
I'm going to go with well, see, I might do you one better. Is the naked couch birth thing worse than the episode where he shaves himself completely clean and then rubs himself down in what's that stuff? Like the lubricant for sanitizer. Yeah, there we go. Because I just want to be pure.
I wouldn't eat during either situation, but yeah, that's a tough call. I'm not sure.
They're both terrible.
They're both, yeah. He's funny as hell.
Oh my God, I love him.
And the fact that they started the 3 guys that started It's Always Sunny, basically FX was like, all right, here you go, you got the keys. This is what you want to do, go for it. And they're like, wait, we got a show, we got to do everything. Can you imagine being those guys?
I mean, I would be on cloud 9, but at the same time, I'd also be like, oh, this is going to be a lot of fucking work.
Because they act in it, they write in it, and I think they produce it as well.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine even you're at that point, but then like one day you're just like working on your next script, and then Danny DeVito just walks into your office and is like, hey guys, I'd like to be in your show. And you're just like, what? Like, yeah, I just want to be on the payroll. And you're like, you're Danny DeVito. What? It's just like I watched a couple episodes and I like it. Like that's what blows my mind.
That is crazy. I'd be like, hey, I loved you in Matilda.
I loved you in Matilda.
So moving on to your other two books that are currently out, Horrors Untold Volume 1 and 2. Is there anything that you would like to dive into to maybe pull in some readers?
Oh, boy. This is one of those questions I should have been prepared for, but I wasn't. I would like with Horrors Untold, they are like the stories are a mishmash from like I would say any like corner of the horror universe you'd want to go into. Like there's like I said, I do like to put cosmic horror in stuff, but sometimes it's just a little bit here and there. Like an ending will happen and then it's like cosmic horror at the very end, but the whole time you're going through it, it's like suspense or it's psychological. A lot of the stories are sometimes they come from dreams that I have.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I do keep like a little notebook on the side of my bed that like, because I'll forget if I don't write it down as soon as I wake up.
Right.
But a lot of stuff does come from my dreams. A couple stories were from people in the group. I a couple times put out a poll like, what kind of story would you like me to write? And I think the one was a lot of people wanted me to write a story about sleep paralysis, which was something at a time was like really interesting to me because it was like everyone that suffers from it, they all see the same stuff. It's usually like these three same entities. Like it's either just a regular shaped man or it's a tall man wearing a hat or it's an old woman, just like kind of a crooked over, like wiry haired shadow type person. And I was really interested by that. And so I did some research and then I was like, okay, well, what if these things come from like a different reality and their job is to make sure that people are sleeping? Because if you don't sleep, then, people will see this other reality and it's like your sleep. That's the only thing that's keeping you from, being able to look through that veil. And that it kind of went from there. And then, the main character eventually, like he just refuses to give in to their needs. And then he becomes, he sees through and he sees reality for what it really is and not like the well slept person would. And then he just becomes one of them. Like that's how they make more of them. It's just people that do not follow the rules. So and that's kind of like my process. That's how I kind of do some stories. Like some of them follow like, normal tropes, if you will, from time to time. Now this will be in Volume 3, which will be coming out this October.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, it'll be coming out this October. One of the stories that the group asked me to do, they're like, we want you to do a slasher story using COVID, but also it's a haunted house.
What the fuck?
And I'm just like, are you guys just fucking trolling me right now? But I sat down and I plotted it out. And then like, I think it was one of my favorite stories I wrote this past year because it was just like, I created an organization within the world of things that I write. I called it CAPS. It's Contain, Analyze, and Protect. Kind of like if you've heard of the SCP Foundation. So this organization's job is to like catalog weird anomalies and like monsters and stuff like that and contain them if they're too dangerous or just monitor things. And it just basically starts with like the two agents for the company. They go and they find this priest who basically gave up on the faith because of like an exorcism that went wrong. And that was like his specialty. And they go to get him because the organization specifically wanted him. And, they're telling him, we got to go to this house because it needs to be exorcised. It's like there's a portal in there, but we don't know where it goes. And we think you might be able to help us close it. At the same time, there is a guy in the attic who is like he's infected. But this version of COVID can infect your brain and make you like homicidal. So then he's plotting to in this world I was making for the disease, there were safe spaces. I know nobody can see it, but I use quotes. there were safe spaces where people could go to congregate to be, like they would give you a room and you stay in that room of this house, and that will be your way of not being out in the world. It was like designed for people that didn't have homes or people that were traveling, that kind of a thing. Think like Airbnb, but like, there's going to be more people in the house and you can't go outside the room. It's just to keep you safe during quarantine.
Gotcha.
So the slasher, the killer, sets up the house that's these people are going to investigate as one of these safe spaces to lure people in to kill them. So and then the climax is kind of crazy, and it makes sense because it's like they're trying to figure out who the killer is, but nobody can figure it out because everybody has to wear masks to be safe.
Oh,
so it turns into a like, they're holding people at gunpoint and they don't know who to shoot because it's just like, who is it? And then in the meantime, the priest finds like this portal and it literally leads to hell.
Wow.
So there's all these things going on at the same time. And like, I don't know. A lot of people told me it worked and they didn't think I'd be able to pull it off. And I was like, well, screw you, I did it.
Well, you got my attention. Now, do you have to read Volume 1 and 2 to fully appreciate Volume 3?
No. They're all like independent of each other, honestly. I mean, the only thing that I do in conjunction through the books is, like I mentioned, the CAPS organization. There's one character from there that I usually write a story about in every book, and that's his name's Major Sunderland. Usually I will have a story about him, and it's going backwards through his life, because in the first story I wrote, he actually died.
Okay.
Well, like everybody died. It was like the world ended. It was
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't know how it ended, so that's there you go. You don't know what ended the world, but yeah. So that's kind of like one of the only things that runs through in congruency. But yeah, you could probably just pick them up and start at any one of them if you'd like.
Yeah, because that sounds so interesting. I want to read that. Does your wife edit all your books? Is it just? Yeah. Was it okay?
Yep, she edits all my work. I've even offered. I was like, I can find, I could pay people to edit. She's like, no, I want to be the first to read these. Like, she gets a kick out of it. She loves reading my stuff, which to me is an amazing compliment.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you feel like, oh, it's my wife. They're just gonna say nice things. It's like, no. As you said earlier in the podcast, she's like, your wife's like, you got to stop fucking up your tenses.
Oh, yeah, dude. Even if and I'm not saying I ever will be, even if I was at Joe Rogan's level, I would forever be grounded as long as I was married to my wife, because she not that she would like try to knock me down, but she'll keep me grounded, to say the least.
Well, I mean, that's good though. That's a good thing to have,
Oh, if I didn't have her, I'd probably be dying at a young age for being pretty stupid about God knows what. I don't even know why. I don't have a good example, but I mean, she keeps me smart and sane.
Well, then tell her I said personally, I said thank you for doing what you do.
Does this mean we're friends now?
Oh shucks.
Oh shucks. Now, I am interested in Volume 3, so maybe we could get you on in October to promote that. That'd be fun. And get Brennan on.
I'd love to come back on, man.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, we'll get Brennan on for that one if he's not too busy. I'm just joking. So moving on to one thing that I wanted to bring up before we branch out. So you're into cosmic horror. I love it too. It's awesome. But the neat thing about your situation, again, and I'm only saying this in admiration, is you have arguably one of the most interesting modern-day cosmic horror writers, which is Mary San Giovanni. And I talk to her every now and then, too. She's one of the sweetest people that you'll ever talk to. So
yeah, Mary's amazing.
Yeah, so I was going to ask is, does she ever read any of your stuff early on?
Yeah, I think she's read through Edge of Twilight, and I think she's read through Horrors Untold, Volume 1. I had just gotten them Volume 2 because we were doing the whole quarantine thing. Yeah. And it wasn't until like a week or two ago that we started recording in studio. Okay. So they're going to read through that. But yeah, like she's read my work, and she's told me, she's like, you got it. Like, that was one of my defining moments for me, was when I gave Brian a novella I was working on that has been submitted. And I was like, just read it. I know it's not perfect, but just tell me what you think. And then when he gave it back to me, and he's just like, yeah, you can make money doing this.
Oh, wow. Holy
I was
shit.
just like,
I just got chills for you, man. That's awesome.
I was just like biting my lip like, thank you. Promise myself I wouldn't cry.
Well, when he tells a story, and I started listening to his older episodes probably, I don't know, months ago. Time means nothing anymore. But when he said that him and I think he was talking about his friend Coop and Jesus they got Richard Lehman to just listen to them talk for like 2 hours about their book and how Lehman would just kind of he was their friend. Brian's also someone that doesn't forget his roots. No. I think that's what keeps you grounded too. And it doesn't hurt that he's got someone like Mary always by his side. Women are smarter, it's my opinion. It definitely doesn't hurt. So it's really cool that like you can go to them. Mary's been really sweet when I've talked to her too. And other people that are established, like Jonathan Mayberry, Brendan said I fangirled with him when we talked to him last week. I think I did, but I love Weird Tales and whatever. He laughed, so, whatever. But you can't help but kind of take a step back, because it's not just for like you or me. It's for anyone that's not a dick and anyone that's not being a bully. You can approach people that are very successful. You can talk to Paul Tremblay or Josh Mallerman. I'm not saying they're going to talk to everyone, but I am saying that they will approach you if they are able to, have the time, and you're polite. And that is, if we didn't have the internet, you would have to write to their publisher or to their agent. And I just think it's so cool that we are able to live in this world. Like, we're talking right now, probably like 3 hours apart, and we would not know each other if it wasn't for the internet.
Well, yeah, exactly. And like you said about keeping your headspace together and being well grounded. Like if I ever reach to the Brian Keene levels, or this, even beyond that, I reach to the Stephen King levels or whatever, I still want to be a person that, if somebody who's starting out wants me to see something of theirs, I want to be open about it, because I probably didn't have to go through a struggle like a lot of other people starting out had to, because I got lucky and I had those friends that were already in the industry. But, I also know starting out, before I met them, when I was writing my first book, I'm like, well, what the hell do you do? Right. Where do you put this? How do you publish this? Who do you get it to get physical copies? And I shit you not, I went to, locally to us, we have a place called Nephra. It's like a major printing, place. And I went in there with a book, and I'm like, how much does it cost me to get just a couple copies of this made into a book? And they're just they're looking at my files, and they're just like, well, I don't know. It probably cost you $14 or $15 a book. And I'm like, oh, I can't fucking do that. I'm like, if I have to charge, if you're charging me 15 and I have to charge 30 to make money off of this, I'm like, who's going to buy this book for $30? So I had no idea back then, but it was being with them, I get to learn stuff that maybe some other people don't, but I also would love to pass that on, because I don't want new writers and stuff to have to feel floundered. I would like to be able to help,
That's great. I think that's really admirable, and that's something that the world itself needs. And horror is, whether people say they go to it for escapism or not, it is to some point for everyone. But
yeah.
So when I started out in 2013, I've always written, just like most writers, I've written my whole life. But when I was I want to be a novelist, that was in 2013, again, due to my wife making me realize I love this, and I forgot about how much I loved reading when I was younger. I didn't know what to do. I self-published one book. Personally, for me, I hated the experience, because I had to go and buy a freelance editor that I had to vet them. One guy was giving me shit for being a horror writer because he said, "What do you like to see people suffer?" So that was a quick conversation.
Oh, for the love of God!
And I did a little research on this guy, and he edited someone's science paper on whales, and somehow it turned into a religious thing. So I just said, I don't want to do this shit. I just want to.
It sounds like that guy shouldn't be editing stuff.
Like, I just want to publish. I just want to be a writer. And it took me like 5 years to really get my voice and figure it out. And I wish that I met certain people before then. Like, now I know people, and they can be like, yeah, you should check out this or read this book to, learn how to become a better writer. And it took a lot of research, like I'm sure it did for you.
Yeah. And, like I said, I will help, ask any questions that I can to help people out. I mean, there's a couple people that, through the horror show and through Twitter and, the internets and everything that I've become friends with that, just kind of came out of the woodwork after being, starting being on the horror show. And, I've been helping some people in the background already. Like, they sent me a work like, tell me what you think about this. And I've read some people's short stories. There's some really talented people out there that just need to not be afraid to step forward. That's what I'll say. If you're listening to this and you know who you are that I'm talking about, that's what I'm saying to you right now. You are talented. You should go out there and do this.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes that's all it takes. Because I've read from other people that they're just like, how do I do this? I don't have time. Or my mom or my wife, I can't remember which, says that this is a waste of time.
It's never a waste of time.
No, for sure.
Yeah, it's never a waste of time. If you feel like you don't have the time, literally adopt the idea of just sitting down and writing for an hour. Just pick an hour out of your day every day. Just sit down. Whatever you get out is what you get out in that hour. But eventually you'll find that you'll be able to write more within that hour. And then you'll want to go beyond that hour. And you'll start making the time to do this.
For sure.
That's kind of how I got back into doing it.
Okay. Before we move on to that, just to piggyback on you helping people, for those listening, Matt helped me with the podcast. And every time I asked a question, you didn't make me feel like an idiot. So you, Michael David Wilson of This Is Horror, Shane Douglas Keene of Ink Heist, and Scott Kemper of Staring Into the Abyss. 4 podcasts that I like. And, you guys are all doing it.
Yeah, I will never make somebody feel stupid if they're coming to ask me a question. Like, yes, you might feel like you have a stupid question, but honestly, when you start out, every question you're going to have is going to feel stupid. Like, especially with podcasting, like, it's not as easy as turning a switch on and just going at it. Like, there's a lot to it that you're not going to know right off the bat.
For sure. And haven't you reached a point where are you editing all these shows on the Brian Keene network?
Yes, every show on that network I'm editing, including Grindcast.
How do you have the time, man?
Well, I've always been really good at time management. Again, not to toot my own horn, but it's always been a knack that I've been good for. It's just like, this slot of time, this is when I'm going to get this accomplished, and I get it accomplished, and then I just move on to something else. So it's just how I've always been.
Do you have like a like, I know for editors, they got like a shot list or what have you. Do you have any kind of reference to say, okay, I edit this out, I edit that out, cut this much? Do you have anything that guides you while you're editing other people's shows?
I kind of make it as simplistic as I possibly can for myself, because if I went as crazy with the editing the podcast stuff as I do writing, I would have Post-it notes everywhere. Like, I would have a coffee table covered in Post-it notes. How I usually do it to make everything sound really good. If you want me to go through my step-by-step process of editing an episode, is that what you're asking?
I guess in a nutshell, how you manage to edit each one that's not like your show.
Okay, so basically I will get the audio in whatever form it comes in, like what's known as the raw audio. and I would recommend this to anybody who's doing a podcast. There's an app you can download. It's called the CN Levelator 2 app. What this app does, it'll make your life so much easier, regardless of the audio between microphones. So like say you're using one mic that's an omnidirectional, but one of the persons in the room has this tendency, where they where they like
Will.
Yeah, fucking Will, man. Where they like to start off talking and then they just kind of do one of these and they just trail off. And so this thing will take all the levels regardless of where they are, and it brings them up to the highest level. So everybody's audio is on the same peak. So then you can bring that back into Audacity, run it through some compressors, do some equalization stuff. And one of the other things I always do is when it pops in the audio track and you can see where all the decibels are, I look for major cracks. So like you'll see where it splits if there's too much dead air, and I will go in and I will edit out as much dead air as I can. And I also try to edit out as much as I can. Yes. I get to a point where I just get tired of it and just like, fuck it, they're staying. Like I'll get like 3/4 of the way through. I'm like, I can't.
Now on that note, on I've noticed after editing, this is the 26th episode I've recorded.
Yeah.
I've edited most of them. So I've noticed, no matter who it is, that has a very distinct, what's it called? A sound pattern?
Waveform?
Yeah, waveform.
Yes, it has a very distinct sound pattern. It just starts like a brick wall and then fades out. God, I can see them from a mile away. I've been doing this for so long.
I just want to shoot them all.
Yeah, I can tell when there's going to be an and I can tell when there's going to be like a lip smack. Because that's just like a straight up and down line that goes from the ceiling to the floor on the waveform.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny because this is like, I consider it to be a job right now because I'm doing it essentially full time. And it's a job I never thought I'd be doing. You know, I always thought, you know, I'll have one podcast. And if that makes it, great. You know, like my admiration for for Grindcast at first was like, I want to create a job where maybe these two friends of mine will be able to quit their jobs and this will be what we do. And we're all just going to have fun, you know, and it turns into a daily thing and we have like a radio show out of it. That was like my goal with Grindcast. Not to put anybody down that has a podcast. That pie in the sky dream is a very, very high pie to reach. I'm not saying it can't be done, but like don't go in like I thought, guns a-blazing, and then get to that point where you feel really depressed because you know it's not going to happen.
I do this for fun.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. Do a podcast for fun with your friends. Don't think about you know, if it's going to make you money or not, because it's not always the case. But you know, I'm loving doing this and writing as a job right now. And it's like that phrase where you do something you love, you feel like you never work a day in your life. And I feel like I'm finally at that point.
That's awesome,
and
man.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier. I mean, like, you know, money could be a little bit more, of course. I mean, everybody would want more money, but you know, just the fact that I can do it is like, it's a gem to me.
I agree. And I'm not going to name the author because I don't know if they would want me to name them, but one of who I became friends with, an author recently said, I told her, I'm like, I never thought that you would be talking to me, not because you're not like nice or anything. I just like, I've known of you for years, and I thought you and other authors that were big just didn't talk to people that you didn't know, basically.
Right.
And now we're good. We're friends. And she goes, "You're a podcaster. That's kind of like a big deal." And I thought about it. I'm like, I guess they're really ratio wise. I guess we're kind of outweighed as far as like population in the community to how many people actually do this.
Right.
And it's weird to think of that. It's fun. It takes a lot of work, but. So what's your advice for people that are thinking about it? Because I guarantee there's going to be at least one or two that are going, I kind of want to do it, but I don't know, just like writing. where the hell do I begin? Now, you broke down your process. That's great. Do you have any other advice where you would say, hey, this is what I would do or whatever?
Are you're gearing that towards writing?
I'm gearing that towards podcasting. But if you want to do that with writing too, that'd be fine.
I mean, I'll field both if you want.
Yeah.
I'll start with the podcasting side of it. If you want to start, I would say first find some friends that, either you all can find a perfect time to do it together. Not saying that you can't do a solo podcast. There are people that are able to do it, but in my personal opinion, it's better to have other heads to bounce ideas off of. So I would always say have a couple friends, either, two or just one other friend that you can both, get a time together. And I would just record a couple, just fuck it episodes is what I called them when we started. Just like seeing how it goes, seeing how your energy works. If you guys can think of things to talk about together. I over the years have started keeping a little notebook that I keep on the desk where I write all the news down that we can talk about. And we don't always talk about every news topic I have on there. There's stuff that never gets touched, but have ideas that you're going to talk about, come brainstorm your niche that you want your podcast to be about. I would say, if anything, that would be the most important thing, because when we started, Grindcast was like, it encompassed everything about pop culture. And I think that sometimes was daunting to certain people, because they're like, well, I don't want to hear this. I want to hear you guys talk about, either games, or I want to hear you talk about comics. I don't really care about movies, or I don't care about video games, so maybe pick a niche market to stick your podcast in. But, at the end of the day, if you do your first couple recordings and you get through the editing part of it and you still feel like it's something that you want, fucking go for it, man. Like, sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And just to kind of jump in on your show, I do love how you cover everything, but what I particularly love about it is you guys know your shit with video games. It's not just your opinions on this game's good or not, but you guys are actual fans of like the hardware, which I got what is it? God, I can't think. I got a degree in computer electronics. I grew up a video game kid. Mm-hmm. This didn't happen. I work at a shit plant. I work at a wastewater treatment plant. But what I wanted to do coming out of school was what one of my friends that graduated with me did, is work on coin slot arcade games, which obviously that probably wouldn't have been great because I don't know of a whole lot that are around. But I love the just how they work. I like the programming. I like the hardware. I like the discussions of it.
Yeah.
You guys know your shit, and you guys know price points of things that I wouldn't even think of. It's really interesting, and you guys got a news aspect too, so it's a good show. I would recommend.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, man. So about writing, what would you have for advice on future writers?
So for future writing, or anybody who's thinking about starting to writing, it almost actually just coincides with how I said about podcasting. Now, I would get yourself, your group of close friends, just tell them like, hey, this is something I always wanted to do. I know if you're like me and my friends, it's kind of like always that, like, you just rat on each other all the time. You just give each other shit constantly. But then you kind of just pull them back and just go, hey, this is something I've been serious about. So if I hand you something to read, would you guys read it? Have your little close group of friends, or as I like to call it, your campfire, and just write whatever comes to your mind. Don't worry about if your punctuation is correct. Don't worry about sentence structure. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Just write it. Get it out there, get it on some paper, get it on a computer, just do it. You can worry about that stuff later.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And give that stuff to your friends. Just go, hey, it might sound like a kindergarten kid wrote this, but tell me if the idea is good.
Yeah, that's great. I think that is helpful advice. I don't know how to segue into this. You talked about Armand Rosamilia earlier.
Yeah.
I talked with him I don't know, months ago, whenever the pandemic started, I guess. And yeah, he was on an episode too, and that guy is so easy to talk to. He's got interesting stories, and he had a Brian Keene story that was funny as hell. But I know you're a fan of the Mondo Method, his podcast.
Yeah.
Him and Chuck's back and forth, they crack me up.
Oh yeah, they both have really good chemistry together. And, the information that they give out is extremely helpful too. Like, yeah. I've directed a couple people that way when they're like, hey, where's good reference material or something I can listen to that's about writing? I'm like, go check out this podcast. Like, the information they give out to people that are just starting on writing is valuable beyond belief.
And it's free.
Opinion. And it's absolutely free. And it's fun to listen to.
Yeah.
It's not just a boring slog of hearing a, college professor explain journalism or something. It's entertaining.
And idiot is constantly used, directed at poor old Chuck Buda. I've been called that by Armand, but I've called myself an idiot, and Armand has no hesitation to back up my comments.
I think that's because he likes you.
I like him too. I was really hoping to meet those guys at the book signing, the Beers and Fears, but obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of things that were going to be firsts for me too, as far as conventions go, and it just didn't happen, and it really stinks. And I'm hoping someday that it will be safe again. Being the cynical person that I am, I don't think that's going to happen for a long time. Like, I know some of these things are rescheduling for 2021, but I don't even think that's going to be a reality, unfortunately. And that's just me playing the safe card, in all honesty. But around here we've had restaurants and stuff reopen, and I'm like, nope, not doing that yet.
Yeah, conventions. That was going to be completely new to me. I was going to go with my family to Scares of Care. I was going to meet all of you guys, you, Brian, and everyone else on the show at that farmer's market. What was it, Steve?
Air Studio, yeah.
Yeah.
Steve Kozanowski's wife's balloon studio, yeah.
Yeah, I was really pumped to do that. I was going to meet you guys there, and
I was pumped to go to a balloon studio. I never even knew something like that existed. Like, when he first told us that, I was like, that's a fucking cool idea.
Yeah. The one that I thought was going to happen was Christopher Golden's Merrimack Book Festival in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and that got canceled too. So
yeah,
I don't know, man. It's my friend, one of my buddies. I don't know if you've heard of him, Michael Clark. He wrote The Patience of the Dead Man. Yeah. He was like, you want to go to a StokerCon next year? I'm like, God, $150, and that's starting out cheap. I'm gonna have to pass for a while, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, thank God there's virtual stuff happening,
Yeah, like CoronaCon, that was neat. I got to listen to a few people.
Yeah, and then there's that Buzz Book Expo coming up, and
yeah, I've talked to Mira. I'm going to advertise that on the show up until it happens. We talked about me being involved in it, and then I talked to my family, and I got to go to our summer area that we go to in August every year. So I don't know what the hell we're going to do, but I got to get out of my house for a little while.
Yeah.
Man, if you're cool with wrapping up with two more questions, and I think that I got one that I'm interested in hearing.
Totally fine with that, man.
What are you currently reading?
Oh, boy. I'm currently reading several things. I'm still working through If It Bleeds.
Oh.
I bought that during the pandemic, but it was just I was doing all that shit with like the daily edits and like all that. It just took me a while to get through that. Since I like cryptids, I was also reading a book. It's Monsters of Pennsylvania. It's like one of those little self-published books that goes down through like all the different stories of people's encounters with this and that and everything else. I was reading a book that I read when I was a kid. I just wanted to revisit it. It was Charles Grant's Raven. And what the hell's the other thing I'm reading? I can't remember right now. So that probably means I'm not. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Brian dropped me off a bunch of the Swamp Thing graphic novels, so I'm reading through Alan Moore's Swamp Thing again.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man. You know what I got at... Actually, why did I word it like that? Like, that's probably impossible to guess. But what I got at a antique store or a thrift store recently were 2 Tales from the Crypt magazines from the 90s.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they were both $3 each. I'm like, fuck yeah, I want to get it. I'm not big into like Superman and all that, but I found them in a pile of all that stuff. And these same, it's like an antique mall, I guess, is the best way to phrase it. I've also found this thing, it's just called H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu. It's 3 volumes.
Oh, yeah, I think I have that too.
Or 1 volume. Yeah, it's really cool artwork. And then the other one was Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, but it's called Orpheus, so I don't even know if it's the first one. It says it's number 1, so I don't know how many there are.
I like anybody looking for good comic book stuff. Like Sandman is fucking amazing.
Yeah, I heard you guys talking about it on the horror show, and I'm like, okay, well, it's Neil Gaiman. You guys recommended it, so yeah, it's a quick.
Yeah, usually when it's Neil, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen Mirror Mask. That is a movie he wrote, and it's like a family movie. It's a weird English one, but it's you could watch it as an adult. I still watch it all the time. It's really neat. This girl, her parents own a traveling circus, and they have to sell it, and she ends up basically in a world that's relatable to Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz. It's just really strange. They use a lot of CGI, but it works in this case.
Yeah. I might have to check that out.
Yeah. And then I just finished today Crossroads by Laurel Hightower.
Yeah, I want to get that book. I've been hearing many good things about it. So
that is definitely on my top 10 list. It's short. You could read it probably in a few days. It's 110 pages. She can write ghost stories. Those are amazing. And then, like I said, I'm reading Brian Keene School, and then an anthology by Grindhouse Press, Worst Laid Plans, that just came out today.
Yeah. So I almost submitted to that, but I didn't make the cutoff date.
Oh, that's a bummer. I submitted to that, but I got a nice rejection from Sam, which I thought was awesome, and I was like, you know what, this is a lot better than a generic, we pass. I've gotten very few personal rejections, so I was like, I'll chalk that up as a win.
Yeah, man. Personal rejection, I would say, is literally like, hey, it just didn't work for this, but it's still good stuff, you know? If they take the time to give you a personal one, that's better than just getting the, hi, read your stuff, sorry. You know?
Which is probably good advice for any new writers, like, don't take things personal, unless someone's like, hey, your mom's a bitch. Like, wait, what?
Well, yeah, that's a different thing, but yeah, you bring up a good point, like, a thick skin is a must. You have to have it. And it is hard having a thick skin, I feel like, being in this industry that you want to get into, because most artistic people are more open about things, and their feelings can get hurt a lot easier, I think, than people that don't really care about art as much, I would say. Not saying you have to be artistic to care and have feelings, but, you know, I think we wear our hearts on our sleeves a little bit more. And yeah, when people say, oh, like, I didn't like this, you take it like a personal attack, but you got to learn not to. Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we sign off today? I think we covered a lot of stuff, man. Yeah. I think we did a good show here. This is going to be a beefy one for you. Yeah, I was looking towards this. So since you joined the horror show, which the first episode I listened to, I remember specifically because it was a big deal. It was called the
I think it was titled The Rise of Chizine, that publication that...
Chizine, yeah.
Chizine, yeah. Yeah, because I heard it on Twitter about this publisher. I'm like, okay, what's this about? And then I saw a podcast. I'm like, Then I listened to the episode. I'm like, okay, these guys are scumbags, but this is a good show. I like it. And eventually you were on more episodes. You're funny as hell. I'm like, I like where this is going. I didn't really want to focus on like you being the funny guy though, because I think you get enough of that. And I'm not trying to knock anyone, but like you're like anyone else that's an artist. There's more than one side to you.
Yes.
I think we got that today, but how do you? I hope you feel that way.
Oh, I certainly do, and I like being a funny guy, but at the end of the day, I'm more than just Alex Jones guy or Dandelion and then all the other stuff that I got labeled as throughout the year being on the show. But yeah, I like to be the funny part on the show just because I feel like some people have come to like that in the show now. I don't, because it's not like it hasn't been funny in the past, but I've had people compliment me like, you bring a different dynamic to it that wasn't there before, and you're a great addition, and that warms my heart hearing that, because sometimes I feel like after I leave, I'm like, I'm just here to be the dartboard and just to see what sticks and what doesn't. But
yeah, well, look at it through this way. I'm always thinking ahead of the future. When I talked with Jonathan Mayberry, he was saying his mentors were Ray Bradbury and Richard Matheson. Now look at who Jonathan Mayberry is. And I'm not like trying to say, oh, you'll be the next Mayberry. I'm not saying you won't be. But, I mean, you listen. You're a good writer. I'm just saying if you stick to it, you'll be someone that other kids look up to.
I appreciate that. I really do, man.
Yeah, I mean it, and I really do hope that we can hook up in October. I would love to, if I get a chance, if it's an option, I would love to be one of the first to read Volume 3, because that one story, holy shit, how do you mix them and make them work? You did it from the description, so I gotta read that. I love slashers.
Well, I have one question for you.
Yes.
So say things become safe, and I can come down to New Jersey.
Oh, I would love to hang out with you.
Where are we getting beers?
Oh, dude, I don't give a shit. I'll meet you wherever. No, because
I don't know New Jersey that well.
I've got places. Plus, I don't know Tim Meyer that well, but maybe I could be like, yeah, J.C. Walsh. I'm friends with him. He's in Philly, so we were actually. You know what? I apologize to everyone else that might not be interested, but J.C. Walsh and me. We were going to hang out in Philly at Dave & Buster's because I'm like, look, man, I like arcades. And I know you do too. And then I was talking to him. I'm like, can we maybe see if we can get like Chuck, Buddha, Tim Meyer, and Frank Edler there just to see what guys from the area would want to do it. And I mean, I don't know what we would do, but I don't care where it is. We could find a place.
Well, as soon as it seems a little bit safer, I'd be down for trying it, man.
Hell yes. That's definitely in the game plan. Just whenever, COVID's kind of gone.
Yeah. Where
can people follow you?
Okay, well, you can follow me at Twitter at Matt_Wildasin. You can also, if you want to reach out to me on Facebook, you can, Matt Wildasin there. I don't use Facebook that much. I pretty much just post Grindcast posts there. And if you want to reach out to me by email, my business email is thegrindedword@gmail.com.
Okay. And now after this show, could you send me that link for your Facebook group? I'll post that in the show notes because I would recommend people check that out. It's pretty cool that you do a monthly short story, plus you can participate in it, which is not something that every author does.
Yeah, you're a better promoter than I. I didn't even mention my damn Facebook group.
Yeah, so
you can also just search for Horrors Untold too on Facebook, or you can use Patrick's very nice link he's going to put down there.
Yeah, it's a nice link, and treat it nice, or we'll be upset. So, Matt Wildasin, I've been wanting to do this for a few months. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you. We will get some beers together, sir, and thank you for being on today's episode.
I appreciate everything you do as well, and I can't wait to come back on next time.
And Brendan will be here, and he will be the smart one of us too, and he will get smart questions asked. All right, man. Have a good night.
You do the same. Thanks, bud.
We are in your mind. We are all around. You are now leaving.